Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics World. Latest post covering finance and property news. Monday again, Edwin again. Edwin, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Martin. I am doing great. Father Christmas is out there, handing out the goodies. So
I know. I was thinking, hang on a moment, it's not Christmas, but Albo's throwing money left, right, and centre. Hang on, whose money is it? Oh, hang on, it's taxpayers' money. Oh, hang on, is he bribing people?
Look, if you reckon that your vote is worth $150, you got to lean that way. But there's more coming. I'd say there'll be a lot more coming, and we'll see what the opposition want to offer as well. So it's going to be your money, my money, everybody's money. It all goes into a pool. But at the end of the day, Martin, who are the winners and who are the losers?
Well, interesting question that, because of course the story will be here that taxes are still going up quite fast because they've frozen the limits, the bands, as it were. That means more money is coming into Treasury. That means that they've got more money to play with. And by the way, it also means with the lower exchange rate that any income from US dollars is going to be worth more in Aussie dollars. So they'll be sitting on quite a big pool of funds. And then the question is, what do they do with it? And of course, what they're doing with it is effectively trying to buy votes. And, it's not just one thing. It's loads of things, $150 off your bill. So as Tarek made the point, the latest announcement means that we've spent $9 billion of taxpayers' money on the subsidies for households for electricity bills. So half the cost of a nuclear power station or thousands of grid scale battery storage, depending on your personal preferences. Or put it another way, another round of taxpayer-funded CPI suppression. As expected, of course, we've said it before, and it's just playing out. But that's not the only story here. It's just worth just recognizing that, of course, without those rebates, power prices would not have dropped by around 25%. They would still be very high. That's because of the marginal cost of gas. Then, of course, you've got the new plan to get $1 million homes with a 2% deposit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. There was the announcement about supercharging prefab modular home construction. Sounds like tents to me. So we'll, find some temporary accommodation for people. And so it goes on. And of course, then you've got the good old, this is the one I thought was amazing. Australians struggling with the cost of living will get access to interest-free loans up to $3,000 to help pay for household goods. And in fact, they could also make loans up to $5,000. I mean, this is payday lending. So the government is now doing the equivalent of payday lending. I can't believe it. And then finally, this one, which of course took the biscuit. This is actually this point about the universities. And there was this so-called report from people linked to the university, I think Adelaide, overseas migrants who I think wrote it, said that actually migration doesn't have anything to do with high rentals. So I'm afraid that Louis Christopher said, according to a university, conflict of interest. Once again, they're trying to make out some type of rate issue. I think that's probably right. And as Jordan said in his tweet, when you add 1 million people to a population of 27 million, it has no effect on rents or house prices, of course. That's actually the line they're running with, and that's the point. So all of this stuff that's going on at the moment, right? It's nuts. And I just want to say that we are in peak stupidity at the moment ahead of the election. Just remember, folks, the temporary visa holders through the roof. Capital city residential asking rents through the roof. And this is the killer chart. This is the ratio of the annual change in population to annual higher intensity dwelling completions. And it shows you that there is a huge, huge, huge impact. And by the way, just so you know, Australian government says that around 7% of properties are actually populated by international students. So you put all that together, and there's a big smell of BS in the air.
Look, there is, Martin, a number of points there, obviously. The first one being when those loans aren't repaid, how is the government going to enforce it, or how is the next government going to enforce it? How much is going to be spent in debt collectors? So, look, you gave me a great idea, and that is I might talk to a couple of my legal eagles, and we might set up a debt collection agency, because I can assure you there's going to be a shitload of debt collecting to do. Now, notwithstanding the fact that you're going to have to feel sorry for the people that are going to that have to borrow that the 3,000 or the 5,000. But the simple fact is any debt collection agency is going to be supplemented by the government. It's going to be funded by the government, and regardless of whether you recover the monies or not, you're going to still get paid by the government, because legal aid aren't going to do it. They're already in. They're already underwater as it is, and they've got too many matters to attend to. So who's gonna chase that debt? That's going to be very, very, very interesting.
Edwin, just let me break in there, because I had a couple of data points on that debt issue. This chart came up the other day. It shows you the net debt per person in dollars, right? It's obviously an average. But what was interesting here, that Victoria holds the prize with more than $25,100 on average per person in the state. That's higher than New South Wales. It's all been going up, right? And the other way to look at it is, of course, household debt to income ratios. Well, guess what? Australia holds the prize. So we are absolutely leveraged to the gills already. And yet, this is more debt, and more debt. And so not only are we loading up the government sector with more debt, because they're going to be running deficits, but we're loading up households, and in fact businesses too, with more debt too. I mean, we are so indebted. It's just not, it's so silly. And of course, interest rates are a lot harder than they were. I mean, we're heading in the wrong direction.
Look, 100%. And going back there to those other points, you've got the power bills going through the roof, skyrocketing, which is absolutely decimating the SMEs, the small to medium enterprises that still manufacture some goods for the construction industry, which that increases the prices, and it puts pressure on the rental arena, and also on the affordability crisis with regards to occupancy of occupancy of homes, because we just can't build enough. We're not building. We're not meeting the demand by any stretch of the imagination, and it's costing more and more. So that's further pressure. So you've got as I was saying, you've got loans given out. The other thing, Martin, with regards to students, I mean, the politicians and everybody in between, from the politicians and the mainstream media, they want to hide behind BS analysis of the fact that the student migrants are not creating an issue. As I said in one of my posts in my new YouTube channel, is the fact that there's a lot that's being masked, and a lot that's not being said. And we've got 700,000 student visas currently. And as of February of this year, we got a further 200,000 that came in February, which is 15% more than February pre-COVID. 2019 February pre-COVID, 15% more. But more to the point, there's 100,000 outside of these numbers. There's also 100,000 transitioning or looking for on transitioning into re-getting a visa, trying to make applications into a different type of visa and getting an extension. There's 30,000 or so in the Administrative Decisions Tribunal. In other words, they want to stay. But a lot of these visa holders, let's not forget that they can also work. They can also work certain hours depending on the classification of the visa. They can work up to 20 hours if you're a student, and more if you're not. If you're in a in the Administrative Decisions Tribunal, and if you're one of the 100,000 also transitioning into another type of form of visa into PR because of the tenure application. That don't forget what we said back in 2020 when they changed the policy with regards to temporary visa post your graduate degrees. That doubled. So you can work up to 40 hours. So this is what's putting a lot of pressure. But I'll tell you what, Martin. On the weekend, I was talking to some property management teams, and I was sitting down with some licensees in charge, and predominantly in the inner west and the eastern suburbs this time around, and the issue and the topic of what's really masking the pressure that Sydney's feeling. I mean, we should be in a lot more pressure than what we are, right? And the conclusion was it's how a lot of these student accommodations are being managed. And as you and I know, you've got hotbeds, as we call them in the industry. You've got hotbeds. In other words, you are leasing a bed in an apartment, and then a two-bedroom apartment could even have 10 beds. So you've got hot bedding, and now these sublettings are done by way of cash. So that doesn't go through the coffers of the government. So this is done by cash to give our viewers a better perspective. So you've got an individual a property owner that has a two-bedroom apartment, let's say close to the city, and it's leasing it out for $1,200 a week. So a local person, or it could be, it could also be an entity, leases that unit. But the property managers know, because this is how the industry operates, and it's all on the hush hush. They lease that property knowing, to this individual or entity. They lease it knowing that they are going to be subletting the rooms or the beds, and the $1,200 rental accommodation then to them becomes a $1,600 or $1,800 rental accommodation, because they either have 6, 8, or 10 individuals in the property. So when you extrapolate that over hundreds and thousands of properties across Sydney, the inner west, the eastern suburbs, anywhere around where you've got the universities, and you've got mayhem on your hands because you've got overcrowding. You've got property managers that are turning a blind eye to overcrowding and basically breaking the regulations. You've also got strata managers that are complicit in all this. So in reality, Martin, if there was more policing by way of Fair Trade in New South Wales of the rental files, that would pick this up. Now, two of the parties that were in the meeting actually said that they had fair trading, and we're talking about 5, 6 years ago. They had fair trading attend their premises, and they said, "Hey, hold on a minute. How come there's an individual here that is leasing, 10, and in another case 15 properties under the same name? That's weird." And you know what fair trading said to them? They said, "Fix it up, get it, get this sorted." So what they did was they talked to the individuals, and then what they did was they registered a business name, and then they changed the leases to a business name or a corporate entity, and whooshka, everything was fixed, and nothing to see here, nothing wrong. But the same practice is still, if anything, over the last 4 or 5 years, it's gotten worse. So, but what I'm getting at is, if fair trading was really doing the job and was checking on the property management files, was properly checking on the strata company files, and put more pressure on strata companies, we would have an absolutely catastrophe on our hands, Martin, because you basically got, as I said, thousands of apartments, thousands of rental properties that would accommodate 3 or 4 adults but they're accommodating 6 to 10. So can you imagine the dilemma that we would be in if they did something about it from that point of view? But they won't, because they know that that is a major issue with regards to to the supply of property and with regards to rental, and hence the reason why your surveys show the issues that many of the locals are facing, because a lot of the property managers as well, they don't want to list these properties to the locals, because the locals will only pay the 1,200, and they won't give them backhanders, by way of brown paper bags or any other form of incentive for these properties to be rented out, to them. They'll rent it out to the ones that are usurping or using the system to their advantage for ill gain. And this is a travesty. This is wrong. This is horrendous. I was gobsmacked after the meeting. I couldn't. I was literally dumbfounded.
Well, I think you make a really interesting point here, because there is a gap between what the data is actually showing, if you look at my surveys, and what people perceive to be going on. And it's partly covered up by some of the things you touched on. I'll come back to fair trading in a second. But just on this, here was an article that Claire Lehman wrote. When the population equivalent to the city of Hobart is landing in Australia in the space of a month, we shouldn't be surprised when Australian citizens find it hard to secure a rental. Labour migration failures create an underclass of working homeless citizens, and that's certainly I'm seeing in my data. And just to bring home that point, you probably saw I actually spoke to Morgan Cox. Morgan was the guy who was on ABC Q&A the other week, and was asking specifically about the rental crisis and how this related to migration. And he was given very short shrift by the panel. But Morgan is, if you listen to my show there, making extremely good points about the fact that the system is broken. And, he's in the situation where he is in the rental sector under pressure, and listening to what he's doing, working multiple jobs and, doing all he can. And he's saying, it's not just me. There are lots and lots of people in the same boat. So we have systematic failure here. And yet, honestly, the politicians don't seem to want to really talk about it in a way that makes any sense at all. So firstly, we should be looking at the relationship between migration and the rental sector, migration and demand. And as you say, some of the demand is being sucked up with the students. And, if you put multiple people into the same properties, well, you can make a significant income, but you're breaking all sorts of rules in the process, fire regs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And fair trading in New South Wales ain't doing much about it. And just on fair trading, you probably saw this, but they, of course, as we touched on last week, are also, quote, cracking down on underquoting. But this was quite interesting from James here in his article, because when you actually listen to what the various agents who were dibbed in and, copped multiple $2,200 fines, a mere bagatelle, we're deeply sorry, it was a genuine human error. It was it was a communication process rather than anything else. The point is here, this isn't just accident. This isn't just happenstance. This is actually deliberate. And that's what I get frustrated about. There is a deliberate set of things going on here. Deliberate high migration, deliberate high student numbers, deliberate underquoting. It is systematically through the industry. And then trying to just claim it's the odd accident, it makes no sense. And then the point is that the regulators are not doing their job either.
No, and this is what I've been saying for a very long time, for a number of decades, and that is you can throw whatever regulations you want at the industry, you can throw whatever legislation you want at the industry. But if you're not going to have a watchdog, if you're not going to have a police force or a strong entity to police the industry and to dish out real fines and to dish out real penalties, well, they're going to give you the middle finger. And I think I wrote an article that may have posted on LinkedIn about 7, 8 years ago. I can't remember around that. Yeah, the property industry is giving Fair Trade in New South Wales or the regulators the middle finger, something along those lines. Because look, ever since from when I got into the industry, the price it low, watch it grow, watch it go, price it high, watch it stay. Mantra. That was the first thing you learned when you joined when you joined the industry. But and it's not gonna change any time soon until they get serious about it, like they are to an extent over in Melbourne. They've got other issues at hand, but at least that is one of the many issues within the industry, one of the many black spots within the industry that Fair Trading Victoria really want to sort out. And they're serious about it. They're serious about it because the fines that they dish out. They're serious about it because they've got the let's call it the police force, the inspectors on the prowl, on the beat, attending auctions. And I've been saying for many years, one of the ways to sort this out is make sure that the entire property file for the properties that are going to go to auction is ready to hand to a fair trading New South Wales inspector to see the whole to look at the whole marketing campaign. But you know what, Martin? The thing right now that people are going to be got to be very wary about is if you're going to be selling your home and if you're going to be convinced to go along with these shenanigans, you're going to be the bigger loser because when there are a lot more properties on the market for sale, when there's a lot more choice, this pricing it low, watching it go is going to backfire. And you know what? I've got no sympathy. I've got no empathy for these vendors that collude with agents. And this is what you get. Now you've got another, by way of collusion, whatever you want to call it. You've got another issue that we've got on our hands, and that is, if you play these sort of games, if you allow, to one of the points that you talked about earlier on, if you allow the energy sector to increase its prices, if you allow to that run right, the outcome is that regardless of how many handouts the government will give you, whether they give you $270 handouts or $300 handouts or $150 handouts in order to buy your vote, at the end of the day, we're still paying $1,300 extra per annum on our energy bill. But the bigger issue here is, again, when governments and people so-called people in charge don't look at the bigger picture, is the issue at hand that we've got now, which also feeds into the issue of rental accommodation and housing affordability, because we're not building enough to meet the demand, is the fact that the cost of materials are going up. And Saul Cavenage brings out a great article, brings out some great points with regards to this whole area and how where the mainstream, the politicians, and everybody in between are not picking up on the blue collar workers of the blue collar industries that are sinking and the businesses that are sinking, which feed into the construction industry and making, in my view, life a lot harder to build and a lot costlier to build. So it's really, you're getting it from both sides of the sword. You're really getting, the industry is really on its knees now.
Well, this is a very important article because it joins the dots, and we're not seeing much joining of dots around the place, but high input energy costs flows through to the higher costs of producing things Either you have to pay more in Australia, or actually what's happening is that most of the manufacturing is just failing in Australia now. And so we're being forced then to import. Of course, those imports are subject then to exchange rates and everything else, and lack of quality control. But the bottom line is that the materials that are actually coming into the country or are being made are low quality or more expensive. So that doesn't help the construction industry at all. And, I get really frustrated with this idea of people just sort of try and spot specific things, but there's no linkages. And, that particular article, to my mind, really is one of the best ones in joining the dots. And we should be doing much more of that, specifically around the election, because the consequences of joining the dots is you don't then just do dumb policies and expect everything else to magically work, because it doesn't. There are consequences, there are follow-throughs, there are implications. It's just like, of course, we want high migration because we need more workers, says business, and we don't want to pay them much, says business. So we bring more workers in, but then we've got to find somewhere to house them. That then has a consequence on the rental sector and on the property prices. That also has a consequence in terms of energy demand, water demand, and, healthcare. The point is, there are consequences for these decisions that are taken without actually the government really wanting to do the joined up thinking. And I'll tell you something else, Edwin. One of the things I get frustrated about is the gap between state and Fed. So it's almost as if the Fed says, "Oh, it's a supply issue on properties. That's a state issue. So we'll just chuck rocks at the states and we'll bribe the states to build more, regardless." Again, there is no joined up understanding of how all these elements flow through. And so we end up with dumb policies wherever you look. And, ahead of the election, there are dumb policies everywhere, frankly.
Yeah, you've got the governments are very, very, very much disjointed from the local governments to state and federal. But one of the common threads across all three is that you've got a lot more committees and a lot more think tanks that get paid a mozza to virtually do nothing and create more of a more expenditure, and then we can claim that. Those, the current government can claim that that there's been increasing job numbers, which is fantastic on they just fiddle with the numbers. It looks great on the one side, but on the other side, it's all taxpayer funded. The question, Martin, is would the Libs have been any better? And I'm one to believe that they wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been any better because the policies are pretty much aligned with one another. There's not much of a difference between the two, and both of them want to take us to through that 2030 agenda, the Paris Accord, and this is one of the broader reasons. That I believe personally, where things are just going to get costlier because of the cost of energy. But the interesting thing is that the governments that go along, obviously with what the federal, which are aligned to each other, which is Victoria. I think Victoria is going to get, it's going to get absolutely pulverized moving forward as well because of their further policies and strain on investors and on people that would otherwise be building and be to meet the demand there as well. But the interesting thing there, Martin, is what we are seeing is in the exodus, we've also seen a huge amount of properties on market, but there's not a lot of absorption of properties, which is contrary to what a lot of people believe would happen, because we've still got rental stress. We've still got huge rental stress. So I'm of the opinion that the rental market, one or two things. Stay me to whatever you want, call me whatever you want to call me, but it's one or two things. The properties that are available to purchase are not in the areas that that the biggest whingers there in Victoria want them to be, because and they're the ones that put the government into power. And it's outside of those inner circles where they would like to be, and you've got issues there in those in the fringes as well, with regards to crime and everything else. And yeah, and secondly, it's not the type of properties that they're looking for, because it doesn't also. You got the other group, which is the group that are looking. They're either aging, or they're either got young families, and they want infrastructure. They want good schools, good schooling. They want uh, you know obviously health facilities, and they're not really getting it, and it puts them further away from the work environment, and investors just want to get out. So what we're seeing is a trend where and you and I have been witnessing this trend over, when we look at the numbers, is where even apartments closer to the CBD, there's a hell of a lot less apartments on the market for sale, and they seem to be absorbed a lot quicker than freestanding homes would. And so it's the opposite of what's happening in Sydney.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting and very important point. But I would make this other point, Edwin, that if you look at what people desire, the truth is most people would still prefer a house rather than an apartment. And if you look carefully at some of the trends, what you'll see is that there's actually significant support for housing. Not the very expensive stuff, although it's moving around, but further down. And in fact, this chart shows the most recent trend, right, with the median apartment and home value tracker. And you can see here that the trends are quite different. So I think this is a really important thing to understand here. And if you look at the counts of what's available, and you've put these little charts up, and 1140 houses for sale in the Sydney region, and then we look at the 17th, 1119 on the 17th, houses for sale under $1 million in Sydney, and then 24th of the 3rd, well, it dropped, 1101. I wonder, could that have anything to do with the announcement of the 2% deposit scheme? What do you think?
Well, this is the thing. So it all comes around policy, right? And you've got politicians again. I mean, it's Groundhog Day, Martin. It's absolutely Groundhog Day. It's doing the same shit over and over again and expecting a different result. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it. You don't get it. Our viewers and our followers don't get it. But the politicians seem to think that this is working. All that it's doing is just inflating the prices of those attainable properties that first-time buyers of the young generation mostly could get into, or even single parents and those in greater need. But as I've been saying, watch this space. Watch this space, because the $1 million freestanding homes in the Sydney region are going to be extinct just as much as the Tasmanian devil is extinct in Tasmania. So and we're not building them. I mean, what's next in order to bring affordable housing? We've gone to the 230, 254, 260 square meter block of land with a monstrous home on it. But they're now up to the 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 million dollars, and you find those in the Ponds, you find those in the Schofields, you find those in Badgerys Creek, you find those in Oran Park. I mean, what's next, Martin? What's next? 3 40-foot containers, put together, and two put together and one put on top, and then you transform them into a house. But by the time you do your civil works and everything else, the land's creeping up to, again, into the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, and then you got to put your dwelling on top, and then you got to make a profit, and you got to, as a developer, you got to pay the bank won't lend you, won't fund the project unless you at least show a 22%, 22 to 27% gross return, and I'm not talking about net. So all these impediments So where do you go? Where do you turn? And the politicians think that by again throwing money, lending money, doing joint venture agreements with households, but that's also limited as well because it only limits it to 10,000, to 30,000, to 40,000. What about the rest? Is Joe Blow down the road better than me? What makes him or her better than me? Isn't my money good enough for me to be a part of that 10,000, 20,000, 40,000? I mean, it is a dystopian, crazy world that we're living in.
I agree, and just want to put this up again. Remember, I mentioned supercharging prefab and modular home construction, right? Well, that may help a little bit, but I would remind everybody that you still need land on which to build, and you still need infrastructure to be able to support the property on the land that you build on. And so those costs aren't necessarily going to be impacted by switching to prefab and modular home construction. And by the way, interesting question is the quality of a lot of those modular buildings as well. So sometimes they don't last as long. I'm not sure this is the silver bullet, but of course, what the parliamentarians are trying to do is to show that they're pulling, quote, all the levers, right? But I'm not sure that they're actually pulling all the levers. They're pulling certain levers, and they're pulling the ones that are perhaps easier to pull. It's very interesting when you actually stand back and think about it. And Tarek actually made this point. There is actually something that could be done. Fixing a flawed levy on the banks could leave Australia's budget billions of dollars better off because Australia's banks are being given an easy ride at taxpayers' expense. But as Dog's Breath made the point, any politician that takes on the banks is done, as per Gerard Renwick. It is a better to bet to take out of the public sector and take it on the supermarkets and, make it 10 times less money. The point is that there are things that could be done, but of course they're politically unacceptable from a point of view of some of those big stakeholders who have huge influential power. And that's part of the problem, really. This dystopian situation where a lot of the decisions that governments are made are actually being messed with because of the power of the financial system and large corporates and the construction sector. All of these are bearing down on governments, and unfortunately governments take more steer from those than from listening to the people who actually elect them in the first place. And it begs the question, are those politicians actually representing the interests of ordinary people or not? And that's one of the things I made a couple of shows over the weekend on, because I think it's really, really important. Now, we should switch on because you have now launched your own YouTube channel, right? Congratulations. And, the first post on Just Think One with 3 subscribers when you sent this across was on a new trend for 2025, the sale of deceased estates. And that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, as you know, Martin, I've had various channels over the years. So what I did was I just relaunched another one just to add, because some of the topics that I want to talk about on the fly as I'm out there inspecting homes and talking to people on the ground. I want to sort of bring it bring it live in a way, and a way that we can be more informative as well, and also continue to share our Monday evening rants on the channel as well. Yeah, so it's Just Think, Just Think One on YouTube, and I've been we raised, and I think it's a trend that we broke it first on the DFA Walk the World. And it's something that the mainstream media, it's probably going to take them another 6 to 8 weeks to pick up. And this is the trend that we started talking about and alluded to a couple of weeks ago, which was with the discussions with the Northwest region agents and the Inner West agents, as to the new tranche, or the newest tranche of home listings that were coming on market. And one of the points that was raised was with regards to deceased estates, and how in that area they're sort of gauging about anywhere between 27 and 30% increase in deceased estates. So, funnily enough, I met with some, with an agency down in the Shire in the 2234 postcode, and I was speaking with one of the leading agents there in the Shire, and I've been working with him. I've known him for quite a number of years, since 2018 or so, and he's one of the leading agents there, and the same thing came up again with regards to the ceased estates. I mean, I didn't even ask the question. He just came up in the conversation, and I thought that, and I said that's very interesting because a similar trend is happening in the northwest region and parts of the northwest region and closer to the Five Dock, and and he said, mate, we've just seen a huge rise in the ceased estates listings post COVID, and so I speak about it in a little bit more detail, and obviously talk about what's happening in that postcode, in the 2234 postcode, and this is from his point of view. He's worked in that area for over 30 years, close to 34 years. So he's sees and knows the area, knows every street, off by heart, knows who lives where and everything. So he's very well on top of it. So the main points there are the properties from when that area was first developed. The bigger properties, the big, 5-bedroom homes, they're absolutely getting smashed, as he puts it. And two reasons. One, the agents that are going in there to get the listings, the first agents, first of all, overquoting the value of the property by somewhere anywhere between 10% and above. And when they go to market, because they're very big properties, and it's not everybody's cup of tea, and they also require a lot of work, and they need to be upgraded. So, when you got a house, a modest home, single level modest home, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, you can get away with renovating the bathrooms in the kitchen with under $100,000. But when you got a monstrous home, and you've got three bathrooms, a powder room, a massive kitchen, and the wet areas increase. I mean, the money machine just goes tick 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 tick, right? So it's very very costly. So they require a lot of work. That was one of the things. The second point there was the inheritors of these properties. The siblings, the majority are in dispute with one another. They just want it sold. So that after going through the first campaign where the agents bought the listing and hardly anybody turns up to the auction, if anybody, no contracts are sought, and there's no real interest at the values that they're trying to offload them for, because they've bought the listing. So then the second agents or agency, in this case, he was telling me he picked up something like 5 deceased estates in the last few weeks. And so, to put our followers and our viewers in perspective, so they go out to market between 2.1 and 2.2 in the first campaign. But when he says, but the real value of those homes are in, anywhere between 1.8 and 1.9. That's the true value of the home, depending on what happens on the day. But because they get marketed so high, then there's no interest. Nobody asks for contracts. Then they go into the second campaign, and they're now being marketed, as he puts it, with blood curdling copy. In order to attract the bargain hunters, in order to attract people's attention. And guess what, Martin? Because the inheritors of the estates have just had enough. They just want the property sold. He says, Edwin, you can come and pick up a bargain, and I reckon I could put a deal together for you anywhere between the 1.6 and the 1.7. So it's a huge difference in price. So two things happen there. There's a distortion in the in the asking price and the selling price because of the overquoting. One. The second thing there is obviously the inheritors of the estate. They don't care. They just want it sold because even if they, from the true value of the property, as he says, to what they're going to get on hand, yeah, when you divide a perceived loss, a book loss or perceived loss of $100,000 or $150,000 or even $200,000, when it's divided amongst four siblings, five siblings, or even six, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of that doesn't make for a lot of money because they want the rest of the money to be that's where the bigger pool is that they want on hand in order to buy in the area. And this is the third point, and that is so you've got a big drop in prices in those bigger homes that demand a lot of work, that demand to be renovated, restored, and they obviously it's going to cost a lot more. But then you've got the modest homes, your 3-bedroom homes, 1 bathroom or even 2 bathrooms, smaller blocks of land. They're increasing in value because of the changeover, which is something that you and I have been observing for a while now, and we've been telling people. And so this is where, for me, it's fascinating to hear and listen to the dynamics of as I say, at grassroots levels as to what's happening in individual postcodes, which properties are going up, which properties are not as appealing to people, and one would say where you could nab yourself a bargain, and those that you want to stay away from.
And one thing we can be sure of, Edwin, is that the number of deceased properties are actually going to increase over the next decade or so because we've got this baby boomer bulge, which is now getting to the point where more people are going to start dropping off the perch. And of course, a lot of those are properties that were bought a long time ago and are quite valuable, So you can expect to see the same things. I would say this, that when you actually come to think about the renovation costs, though, that are required to bring a lot of these properties up to scratch, they are pretty humongous. And of course, getting good builders to be able to do this type of renovation work is also problematic. So that's something that people need to factor in. And actually, if you're looking at a deceased estate, it's really, really important. And we've said this before, we'll say it again, you must get your own separate structural survey.
Yeah, look, 100%. This is the things that you and I talk about, or predominantly you coined the phrase that you've got to be, you've really got to drill into, you've really got to drill down, and into the block, into a street. You could have the same house built by the same builder on opposite sides of the street, and one demands 5% more than the other. Why? Because in certain months of the year, one has the potential to have the roof flown off by the wind, and the other one doesn't. It's all these things you learn, all these things, and this is and also what one side's got more sandstone underneath the structure, and you've got more water seepage coming through and mold coming through, and the other side doesn't. I mean, there's so many variables, but people don't understand that, and they just go all in, believing the selling agents. And so yeah, look, on that. So the channel is for that, Martin, is to sort of expand a little bit more on the points that I raise from time to time. Obviously, on the Monday evening rants, we go through many aspects of what's happening over the week or what's happening out there. We'll try to break news, but there are some points that it allows me to really expand a bit more and give a little bit more depth, insight, and that's what I'll continue to do, and we'll see where it goes. But but it's got the same name as my X or Twitter handle. The same brand, and I just want to keep it uniform so that people know where it's at. So by all means, please follow me, and we'll expand a little bit more on the points that we raised on the Monday nights, Martin.
Yeah, just think one, just for those that missed it, just think one on YouTube. So go across once you finish watching this, go across and subscribe to Edwin's additional channel. And just to reconfirm, Edwin is not going anywhere. He will still be back for the rants on a Monday evening as well.
Oh, yeah.
Now let's just briefly touch on the numbers.
This is where we have a lot. This is where the discussions really go down. Oh, the other reason too, what Martin, is because see, I can say any type of shit on my channel, right? And I can get nuked by Google and everyone. Whereas I can't say too much on this because
Well, I don't think we hold back too much, but we do try and make sure we don't get ourselves banned, which would not help anybody. Let's just talk about the numbers, Edwin, because the weeks are ticking by, and we're moving now into the slower part of the market, Easter, and then winter. So let's have a look. In Sydney, on the 17th, there were 20,862 properties listed based on domain in the Sydney region, and if we jump forward to the 24th, 21,127. So listings are still rising, and in fact you can see there the trend is showing quite an interesting lift actually, and a little bit different from last year.
Look, it is bucking the trend. We've still got about 5-6 weeks to go before we get into winter, but it's bucking the trend. However, in many parts of Sydney, the demand is still very high. So don't let the numbers fool you. It's more because they're dragging on, the sales are dragging on post auction campaigns, post those short off market campaigns that agencies put forth. But as you and I have been saying also for a while, it's because there's a lot of lemons out there. There is a hell of a lot of lemons out there, but don't be fooled by the homes that are going out there, all spruced up, look, smeek, because the renovations are cheap, and quite, we've shared about the showroom renovations that the WeChat chatterers allude to and talk about, and we've also shared on the many ways and the many tips with our viewers and followers, Martin. That's why they're the smartest kids on the block. As to how to pick those showroom renovations when they go out to inspect homes, and more to the point, when they go into the wet areas. So that's what's out there. But people are wising up, Martin. They are becoming a lot wiser with the different trends. But let's see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, and I will just make the point that when you're looking at a property that is superficially renovated, it might look shiny and nice, but if you peel back the lemon or the onion or whatever you want to call it, what you'll discover is problems. Actually, one of the worst things to find is a bodger who's tried to do it themselves, right, and basically have tried to cover up faults and problems and defects. And unfortunately, some of the surveys that are provided as part of the sale process as the marketing campaign won't look beyond the superficiality. But as we've said on many occasions, it's really important to go beyond that and really ask the question, what is the likely cost of getting the property right? And unfortunately, again, I had a one-on-one this last week with somebody who'd bought a property, taken on trust the marketing spiel with regard to the survey, and then within a month had significant unexpected costs relating to plumbing, electrics, and roofing. And, totting up the extra costs that were spent, it was thousands and thousands of dollars more than the survey if they'd had one done. Because if they had a survey done, they could have probably built the property but have negotiated down and therefore had more equity to be able to make fix the problem. So really important. Let's move on to Melbourne and just look at what's happening there. So on the 17th in Melbourne, 28,737, still a booming market for houses. But if we jump forward to the 24th, 28,688. So once again, it's similar story there. And if you look in Brisbane, on the 17th, 3,902. and 3,974 the week later. So we are still seeing listings quite strong. But again, I want to re-emphasize a lot of the stuff that's on the market is low quality stuff. A lot of us on the market has been around for quite some time. And I'm still seeing the tactic of property going on the market, not selling, being taken off the market, and then being relisted a few weeks later as if it were a new property. And that's something else that people need to bear in mind, because what you see is the old favorites popping up again sometimes.
Yeah, and this is a policy that Domain and Real Estate have. So you can literally take your property off Domain and Real Estate for 2 weeks, notify them, and then you come back on with a fresh campaign, and you've got and you get the same placement as what you did before, because they're charging vendors upwards of $2,000, $2,500 for the first for those first priority listings when they first come online, and hence the reason why the marketing's just before you could put on Domain and Real Estate, it's you're you're not getting much change out of $7,000. That's typically across the board. But then obviously there are add-ons to that agencies put on. But in general terms, you could be paying anywhere, depending on the area that you're trying to sell at, anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 when you include photos, video, signboard, and the priority listings on Domain and Real Estate. That's just the costs to come on. But another rant for another day as to what happens with that. The auctions, Martin, seem to be picking up in terms of numbers, Martin, and that's rather interesting. But in terms of percentages, if you look purely at percentages, we seem to be doing a little bit better this year, week on week from last year than. But in terms of numbers, we're still relatively up to week 12. There was a huge gap, but the weeks seem to be lining up again, on par. We'll see what happens moving forward. But again, this is not, nothing other than to give our audience, some more numbers to chew on, and to discuss over the dinner table or barbecue.
We know they're like numbers and statistics and things, so that's one of the things that we do try to provide each week. And I've had a few people say, oh, it's like listening to last week. No, these numbers are all new. Right? Every week we update the numbers. So, if the markets are behaving the same as last week, you're going to get a similar story. But if they're changing, as they are now this week, you get a different story. So it's really important to check in each week. Now, let's just quickly look at the rentals. And in Sydney, on the 17th, there were 10,204 properties listed for rent in the Sydney region on Domain, and 10,368 a week later, so a slight rise. And in Melbourne, 10,744 on the 17th, and 10,857 a week later, so a slight rise. Not a dramatic rise, but very interestingly, although the newspapers are still reporting rental growth not as strong, I'm not getting that same story from the individuals I speak with, who are still struggling with significant rental increases, and people are still being confronted with rental increases above 10%. So it is very important to understand that the top level trends mask the granular differences down on the ground.
Yeah, and it also depends, as we said earlier on, depends on where you are, because the rents will increase if you're in areas where there's a student high demand. As I said, those individuals and those corporations, or what entities, they'll offer a little bit more and literally outbid you, because they're not living in the properties themselves. They're going to lease out. They're going to lease it out by way of hotbedding or just cramming in 6, 8 tenants, subletting tenants into a 2-bedroom apartment. And one of the things that I forgot to mention was that how do they get away with getting in and out of the building? When the property manager only gives out 2 fobs to get in, to get into those to get into through the main door into the elevator. What they do is they go to if you're close to the city, they go to Chinatown. Apparently, there's about three or four different shops there in Chinatown where you pay them $20, $30, and they copy the fob, and rather than just having two, for the or one for the leaseholder, they give them out according to the entities on the lease. They'll duplicate them and hand them out to all the individuals coming in and out. But everybody's turning a blind eye, mate, and this is the one of the biggest issues. And the only way that this is going to be curbed, unfortunately, is going to be when we end up with one of those instances like we had over in, if you recall, I think it's 10, 12 years ago in Bankstown, where that poor lass burned alive. We're going to have some similar, if not all, and it's all going to be, sadly, it'll be related to those, the batteries and some sort of battery charger, or even the cooking facilities, because of it's craziness.
Yeah, overcrowding, of course, creates significant demands on the building and also the exits and entrances. And if there's a problem, like a fire or something, then you don't have the normal exit routes, and you don't necessarily have the normal alarms and everything. So this is a really important thing. And I guess it's part of a broader question, Edwin, that if you are looking at a rental property, it's very important to make sure that you do your pre-occupation inspection before you go in, right? Because, once you're in, you're in. A bit of a war story here that you've got that shows that if you don't do that, you can be up for quite a lot of money.
Yeah, and this is the tip for the week. So I've always made it a point, with family members, friends, and those that have asked. I've even encouraged, when I was running the property management side of the business for many years. I even encouraged new tenants. I used to say to them, "Well, come and pick up the key. Come and pick up the keys earlier, and I would prefer you to do your preoccupation inspection, not the prescribed time for you to do it from when you get the keys, or when the lease starts. Is you got to provide it back to the office within 7 days. I reckon. One day is to one day of occupancy, and you've shoved in all your goods and chattels. All sorts of things could go wrong, and then you're not documenting everything. So I've always pointed out to tenants, as I said, and others, you try and do it before you even move into the place, because, and more so now as litigation is becoming, it's really getting harder, and unfortunately there's the tribunal just filled with matters where agents, property managers are incompetent in performing their role, which is confusing the issue. Tenants don't really know what to do. They're relying on the so-called professional to be guided by them, and then it becomes your loss. So my thing is before you go in, document everything. Things that the main things. I'll go over a few of the main things that tenants get caught out on when you vacate, and the property managers want to keep the bond. You've got the window tracks. They're usually left dirty. I've hardly ever seen, other than the cleaning people that we would get to come back and redo things ourselves. But I've hardly seen the window tracks get clean, and property managers love to use that as a reason to withhold a lot of money in cleaning. And that could cost you anywhere between $400 and $600, which is a lot of money. Then you've got if you've got dishwashers, if you've got air conditioning units, split system air conditioning units, more than likely the filters aren't clean in those, and yeah, things go wrong when the filters that aren't cleaned, and you've got all sorts of issues, especially with dishwashers. Um, make sure that that you cover yourself on that when you're actually signing the lease. If there is a dishwasher, make sure and you make it very clear that you want the dishwasher before you occupy the premises, that you want the filters clean, because they also that's one of the reasons why you end up with flooding in apartment buildings. See, you hear about that all the time. Um, and also you've got other issues of uh, pre-damage. And if you move all your stuff in, you aren't able to check the carpets properly, if the flooring is carpeted, yeah, marks, scratches that are just being, because you're in a hurry to move in, the pressure's on, you don't really get to see the stains on the walls, or yeah, the scratch marks on the doors and on the door jambs and so forth. And guess what? They'll use that against you, because the property managers themselves don't purposefully, not all the time, but in most cases purposefully, don't document that, because they don't want the landlords to see how badly a bad a job they've been performing in not maintaining the property. So then you're the bunny that pays for it, Martin, and to change carpets. Everything's costlier now to get a wall painted. It's all cost. So that's my tip. I put out a video on my Twitter handle, on my X. I posted a video there, and in this video, this is where we spoke about last week, how property manager or property services, they want to do less, and yet they want to pay more, and they're outsourcing a lot of the inspections as well. Oh, that's another thing. You're not necessarily the property manager that you're dealing with, in a lot of cases, isn't the one that performed the ingoing inspection report that's given to you for you to do your pre-occupation inspection reporting. Now it's usually done by somebody else. And this is a property, and I've got photos up there on there, how you pull the range hood out and you can see all the grease there. If you don't document that, to say that, hey, the property manager, whoever did the ingoing inspection report, uh, did not pick this up, and I'm not going to wear this, and but because I took all these photos for our client, uh, the property manager gave me a file that had approximately anywhere between 50 and 60 photos of the two-bedroom granny flat. I handed back my preoccupation inspection counter to theirs, and mine had something like 275 photos. So it took a little bit longer, but hey, I needed to protect my client. They couldn't make, and the biggest thing there was, look at the smoke alarm, Martin. It's hanging off the bloody ceiling. It's not even working. And in the report, that wasn't even noted as a working smoke alarm in the report that I got given by the property manager. I called the licensee in charge, sorry, not the licensee in charge. I called the manager, the senior manager of that office, and I said, "What the hell? I need this thing fixed before my client comes and occupies the property."
Yeah, and that's the point, of course, that it's important to do this thing as you go in. And the mobile phone is your friend, because it's very, very easy these days to take photographs. It's, don't need special equipment. So it is worth documenting and recording what you see, and make sure that that's all there, so that when you actually have an issue later, you can be on firm ground. Because, of course, the property manager will be looking after the interests, not of you, but of the landlord. And it's just worth bearing that in mind, Edwin, isn't it?
Yeah, and also they're looking after the interest of saving their ass, because they didn't tell the landlord that the previous tenant, because they didn't do the outgoing inspection report properly, and they're going to pin the damage that the previous tenant left behind, they're going to pin it on you. You're the bunny that cops it. And look, the other thing is, guys, is the property managers, a lot of them don't understand, fair wear and tear and damage. They really got no concept. They really got no idea, and it's cumbersome to go to the tribunal, especially when it's so backed up, and you're wasting time because you have to sort out a claim of, or look, cleaning, as I said, could be 400, could be 600. Change of carpet, although it's mitigated by the year, the year, the age of the premises, or how old the carpet is. It might have been changed a year ago, or you might have received a new, but you didn't notice a stain on the corner. They want to lumber you with the whole thing. So it's all prorated, it's all mitigated, but it's still a cost. But more importantly, it's that cost, because the first time around in the tribunal, you waste a day. And then if it goes into a formal hearing, you could be wasting another further 2 days. It's just a sheer waste of time. So my tip is, if they give you 50 photos, counter that with 300 and document everything in detail. Even if you think it's wear and tear, just note it down. Just note it down and hand it back. It's all done electronically anyway. It's all done through these apps. Because I can guarantee you, the property manager that you're dealing with did not in most cases do not do so they themselves don't know how the property is or isn't like.
Yeah, and I'll just make one extension to that. Another reason to use photographs is when you're actually you've moved in and you've got your own possessions there. Then what you need to do is to take some photographs for insurance purposes, so that there is no doubt if you make a claim later about what you had in the property, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had a lot of success with people where I've helped, where they actually did take those photographs and then did effectively use them to negotiate with the insurance company to be able to get a payout when there was a bit of a disaster later. So that's another reason to use photos. And tech is your friend here. Edwin, talking about tech being our friend, it's worked well tonight. So thank you very much for spending some time with us this evening, as always, on a Monday. I'll look forward to doing it all again next week. And just a reminder, go and now register over at Edwin's separate YouTube channel, Just Think One. See you next week, Edwin.
All the best, Martin. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.